Welcome to the fourth episode of Once Upon a Student. My guest today is Tamas Petrovics, a former McKinsey consultant who is disrupting the healthcare industry. From partying harder than studying to pioneering in healthcare innovation with his company Xund.
I don't think there's that much of a difference between a hard partying student and a successful founder because it involves very little sleep, working under stress.
How did you came up to innovate the healthcare industry?
We actually had more than 100 ideas lined up. And then we very systematically try to analyze them. How profitable can this be? How difficult will it be to do this? How good is our network in this area? And obviously, all our assumptions were wrong.
Crazy. Honestly, this is such a unique approach I haven't heard of yet.
But yeah, even though I like to think of myself as a very analytical person, just founding a company is per definition an extremely emotional and very irrational decision.
Welcome to the fourth episode of Once Upon a Student, a place where we uncover the untold stories of extraordinary individuals. My guest today is Tamas Petrovics, a former McKinsey consultant who is disrupting the healthcare industry. From partying harder than studying to pioneering in healthcare innovation with his company Xund, Tamas' path is a roller coaster of audacity, resilience, and groundbreaking success. So stay tuned as Tamas reveals how he went from a struggling student to shaking up the healthcare industry, overcoming near impossible challenges on the road and transforming setbacks into triumphs. Welcome, Tamas.
Hi.
Hi. I'm very glad you found the time to be my guest today, as I think your story will be an inspiration for many students and also many consultants to come. What I also like about your story is that you're very transparent about your journey, and also about your university life. And what raises my question is, how do you overcome from partying a lot and from not having, like you said, the best grades at university to being a successful founder? What's the road?
First of all, thanks for having me. I don't think there's that much of a difference between a hard partying student and a successful founder because it involves very little sleep, working under stress, and I guess you can learn a lot from being out in the nightlife of your early 20s when you become a founder or a McKinsey consultant or whichever of the both. So I think there's always something to learn from every part of your life.
But this wasn't the place where you found the inspiration to become a founder?
No, absolutely not. That inspiration came quite early in my life. So one of my co-founders, Lucas, we went to school together. So we know each other since the age of 10. And when we graduated from high school, this was around 2007, which is the time when these new wave of online startups, Facebook, etc., start to become successful. So we thought to ourselves, hey, this could be us. Like, why don't we do the same? Now, luckily, back then, after graduating from high school, we decided to first go and study a bit and work a bit and make mistakes at the cost of others before we started making mistakes at our own costs later on.
And was it your own decision, or have your parents supported you to have firstly like a stability? Or what was the motivation to really firstly go to university?
I don't know. It was maybe a combination of not knowing what I wanted to do. So typically if you don't know what you want to do, you go and study business. This is what I did. And then after I graduated from my bachelor's, I didn't feel ready to go and become a founder. I just felt I haven't gathered enough experience. So if you don't know what you want to do, you become a consultant. So this is what I did. And then after a few years at McKinsey, it became clear that now or never is the time to go out and start something. And luckily, this also coincided with a phase in my co-founder's life where he also felt the same. He was also in consulting, but in a political area. And we sat down, we thought a lot about the idea, because back then I thought the idea is really what makes the difference. Now I know it's only execution. A year later, we started the company and got going.
So your background was economical, and your co-founder's background was political consulting.
Yes, he's a political scientist.
How did you came up to innovate the healthcare industry?
It was a whole bunch of naivete, I would say. We just thought, how difficult can it be? I mean, I had a long-standing excitement and interest in healthcare. Actually, I thought I would want to become a doctor for quite a long time during my high school years, but then I ditched this idea last minute at the age of 18. But this interest remained also afterwards, and this was also fueled by Zoltan, our third co-founder, who's actually the husband of my mother. So I always had this doctor in my close family who kept this interest alive. And this is also the reason why we managed to convince a 50-year-old senior doctor to relocate from Germany to Vienna and start a company with us. We looked at a bunch of different ideas. We actually had more than 100 ideas lined up. And then we very systematically tried to analyze them. How profitable can this be? How difficult will it be to do this? How good is our network in this area? And obviously, all our assumptions were wrong. We just eventually made up a list where we thought, okay, this sounds right. And Xund was the third on the list, not the first. But we had one non-numerical question at the end, which is, if someone asks you what you are building, how proud would you be, or would you like to talk about it? And this had a very, very strong answer for Xund, and it had a less strong answer for the others. So assuming that all our assumptions regarding the scoring are wrong anyway, we said, okay, let's go with the one where we feel really strongly about and really proud about, and let's try and do it. And how difficult can it be?
Crazy. Honestly, this is such a unique approach I haven't heard of yet.
This is a very consultant-like approach. I bet many consultants who become entrepreneurs go through a very similar
It's a very streamlined process and very analytical.
Yes.
And good that you mentioned consulting, because I don't know if you have heard the commentaries of investor Kevin O'Leary, who's quite known in the US market. And his take on consultants is that they struggle quite a lot when founding the company, because they are mostly in streamlined processes. Mm-hmm. And as a founder, you have to be creative. You have to take your own decision all the time. How have you managed to do the step from being a consultant to being a founder, where all the responsibility is on your shoulders?
I mean, this was one of the reasons why I wanted to become a founder in the first place. I was really looking for this responsibility, and I was really looking for a chance on not only to give advice to others on what they should do, but actually try and do it myself and see where it leads. So I think from this perspective, my natural approach to life just fits this founder role better. Then again, it's also very important which type of people you found the company with. I don't think I would be a great solo founder, but I really work well in a team, and both Zoltan and Lucas, my two co-founders, they have completely different personalities than I do. They are much less structured than I am, but on the other hand, they are, much more optimistic about the future, much more, outgoing, and say, hey, okay, let's try it and see where it leads us. So I get dragged along with their optimism, and they get, drawn back to the reality with my structured thinking. And I think this is a pretty good combination eventually. And, my last thought on this is, I know a lot of really good founders who used to work for, McKinsey, Bain, BCG. So I would, in general, disagree that you cannot be a good founder, successful founder, if you come from one of these companies. But I do agree that many of the people I used to work with at McKinsey probably don't fit the typical profile from an emotional and motivational perspective of a startup founder.
Interesting. And also, what I like about your approach, you talk a lot about your team. So what I have seen in the whole scene, and what we have already discussed with my previous guests, is that the team is probably the most important part of a successful startup.
Absolutely.
So you have already known your team members from the beginning, but were there specific characteristics of your current co-founders that you would tell, okay, they gave you the security for your decision to found a company with them?
I don't know if it's security, because I don't think you'd ever feel secure when you're a founder. It's a very unsecure environment, and you just have to live with it. There's no way around it. But if you have the right people surrounding you who, when you're feeling down, they cheer you up, and vice versa. It really helps if you have different types of personalities, because then you're probably affected by different types of circumstances. Because there are always challenging circumstances, and maybe one day I need some extra push. The next day Lucas needs an extra push, and we just keep pushing ourselves onward. So yeah, I don't think there is a clean cut schema I would look out for in terms of characteristics. But looking back, I think what's really useful is that we're so different. So even though we're all unfortunately white men, and I wish we had a bit more also cultural diversity and gender diversity in our founding team, but we don't. So, and that's hard to change retrospectively. But despite being three white men, we do have extremely different personalities, and we fight also a lot. I mean, less than we used to in the beginning, when we had really fundamental questions to decide on. But we do have regular misalignments amongst each other, and this is really, really helpful, because it prevents you from going down the wrong path very fast. And in the beginning, I often thought to myself, wow, it would be so great to have founded this company with two other people from McKinsey, because thinking back to my times at the firm, we're so efficient just working our way towards solving a problem, and we would have probably been very efficient in working our way towards the solution of a problem which we thought was right, but probably many of those solutions would have ended up being wrong, because we just would have lacked the diverse perspective of a 50-year-old doctor, a political scientist, and a business guy.
I love that you now mentioned an approach that was written in one of my favorite books by Adam Grant, Think Again. The author mentions in the book that basically every conversation we have with co-founders, with family members or friends, is that we have two perspectives, and through conversation and through dialogue or even disagreements, we are coming closer to this one right path. And I think this is what you're telling, that you had different perspectives, but this is what made you better into finding the right approach to the market.
Absolutely. And we often have the fights we otherwise would have with external parties internally. So Zoltan, our chief medical officer, he always represents the classic healthcare system. He's a bit more risk averse. He always likes us to be very on point with everything related to regulatory guidelines, etc., clinical studies, and naturally, me and Lucas, we would have been probably a bit more laissez-faire about these things, because we just don't have the inside perspective of how important this is in healthcare. And we fought a lot with Zoltan about, do we really need to do this? This is going to slow us down. It's going to take 6 months longer to launch the product. But if we hadn't done those things, probably would have had massive clashes with the healthcare system, with doctors, with politicians, whoever, which could have sacked the company or left us completely on the floor without any second chance to get back up again. So yeah, having those fights internally and having those disagreements, I think, is an extremely valuable asset to have.
And you mentioned a list of different ideas you had at the beginning. When you started Xund, what were the initial goals for the company, and what were your personal goals at Xund?
So it's funny that you ask, because I was reminded about this just recently, actually by my mother. Funny enough, she remembered it better than I did. So in the beginning, I had 3 goals, and we achieved them all. So I can just leave the company now. I don't intend to do that. So goal number 1 was to launch a product which somebody is willing to pay for. I didn't care how much, but somebody says, okay, whatever you build, that's worth paying something for it. Second was to hire someone who is willing to invest their most valuable resource, their time, into Xund and work for us. And third was to get someone invest their capital into Xund and get at least one investor who says, okay, I believe in you guys, and I give you a sum of money to keep going. And we had an investment so far. We have people working for us. We have products that companies in the healthcare system are willing to pay for. So these initial goals have been reached. Obviously now, you start to push out those goals, but it's always good to remind yourself of what you initially wanted to achieve when you started the company. And it just gives you some peace of mind that, you're doing well, and just keep pushing.
First, huge congratulations on achieving all your goals at Xund already at such a young age. And is there a guiding principle that throughout your whole journey was sticking with you?
Well, it's that's a tricky question, because in my opinion, it's really hard to have just one guiding principle when you're dealing with so many diverse challenges as a founder. So I think ultimately it's really about surrounding yourself with people who can help you achieve your goals, and just trying to optimize for that. Just always try to have the best people who are available to you and who are willing to work with you to come and work with you on the problems you are facing. Naturally, as a business student, I have very little to add to anything which is AI related or anything which is medical in our company. So from day one, I was dependent on the expertise of other people, and them, being willing and able to help us build this vision that we have. And I think this is probably also one of the great successes so far for me personally at Xund, that I believe we have a really, really good team of truly exceptional individuals. I mean, our head of quality management, Sophie, I'm always surprised when I realize how young she is. Like, she managed to certify the first API in our industry as a Class 2A medical device, which is a really, really high bar. I'm not going to go into details now, but it's the same level as a CT
Sounds
scanner.
difficult.
Yeah, it's very, very hard. And I think she was 25 and she led the whole project. Like, when I was 25, I was partying hard at VU and not thinking about anything related to medical devices. So these things just I'm again and again surprised how great the people are who are working with us. And if you manage to find the right people, you're going to be successful.
Good advice. And you mentioned your third goal from the beginning was to raise money. And we have already a little conversation before starting this official conversation. And you told me that the first raising round is one of the most difficult ones. How did you manage to still get it on board?
For us, it was super difficult. I mean, what you have to understand first is, when we started Xund in 2018, there was already a cohort of competitors who started around 2010. So
8 years,
7-8 years head start, and most of them have by that time raised significant amounts, some of them hundreds of millions. But we just viewed them as being built on fundamentally flawed principles in the way the products work, in the way their business model works. So we thought, this can be done better, this can be done differently, and we can build a successful company despite these companies already being out there. But, selling this to an investor, especially without a technical co-founder, which we didn't have, was a very challenging task. So, naive as I was, coming out of consulting, I thought, I'm going to make a great pitch deck. I'm going to, approach investors, and, 6 months down the road, we're going to have the first $1 million in the bank, and we're just going to keep working. And until then, we can work with the money which we have, put onto the side to, start the company. Now, this wasn't exactly the case. So instead of 6 months, this took us more than 2 years to raise the first round. So we had to basically stretch out that amount that we have put aside for 2 years, plus get extra, loans from friends and family. So it was a financially very challenging time. And basically was what brought the breakthrough in us being able to raise the first round was developing a first prototype where we could prove that actually if we are given enough money, we can assemble a team that has the capabilities to build a competitive product that can actually outmaneuver these existing solutions on the market. And, again, here, there was a lot of luck involved in how we found the first developers who came on board and created the first prototype with us. We had, through, random connections, we got in touch with Theo Wien, who helped us, build the first AI algorithms behind the solution. But, this is nothing you can plan for, and certainly, nothing which can go into a business plan when you approach the first investors. So, being resilient and learning how to accept a no without taking it personally has been the biggest learning for me. In this phase, I realized how privileged and lucky I was my whole life. Looking back, all I heard all my life was yes, yes, yes. You want to come study here? Yes. You want to come here work at this great company? Yes. Everything was a yes. And then all of a sudden, started approaching these investors, and all I heard was either nothing, because many investors just didn't even reply, or it was a no. And so good learnings. Also, how you structure a fundraising, etc. But I think with every round we got better. And I hope the next round will be the easiest we ever had.
I hope that too for you. No, very interesting insights. I think raising first time. I think many founders that got the first time into entrepreneurship, like you said, we always think I would say the media made it look pretty easy nowadays to found a company. That you just have to set up a website, drop shipping product from Asia and then sell it in Europe, but it's not that way. Not done it that way. And I think learning to accept no's is the most difficult part. Absolutely. In the beginning. And for me as well, after 4 or 5 years, if you get a no, all right.
I'm not sure it's accepting it, because fun fact, our first investor, who was Hans-Peter Haselsteiner, Austrians will know him from 2 Minuten, 2 Millionen. So he actually said no first to us. And then we got the benchmark and we got the results of the first prototype. So we approached again his investment firm, and then they became the lead investor for our first round. So I think it's really about not taking it personally and taking it as okay, there's no fit now, but if something changes either on their side or your side, you can approach them again without any hard feelings, and just either get your second no or maybe get a yes.
It's also good to get feedback.
Yes.
What was terrible or what was good.
Yeah. So this is one advice I would give anyone who's out there fundraising, especially if it's one of their early rounds. So what I always did is, when I received a no, I tried to get them to still get back on a call with me, and especially if we had a number of conversations, and because whatever they write in their email, it's probably just 10% of the reasoning. But if you get on a call and it's not written, they typically give you really good insights on what's lacking in your storyline. And sometimes it really is the case that they believe what you're building is really good, but it just doesn't fit into whatever criteria their fund has, decided upon.
Yep.
And I always ask, if I have the feeling that they actually believe that what we're doing is good, I ask for intros and recommendations to other funds who they believe might be a better fit for the round. And one of our lead investors of our seed round, Mass Mutual Ventures from Boston, so our first US investor, he got introduced to me, Ryan, got introduced to me by an investor who said no to us previously.
That's good to go. I will write it down for our next round, because we are currently on the road to start our financing round. So I will take notice of it.
Good luck.
We will need it. And you mentioned that you initially planned the phase of starting the idea and getting the first investment on board, that it should be like 6 months. Was it also what you planned with your funds? Because then you mentioned that you needed like 2 years for actually getting investment on board. Was it difficult also financially to overcome this period?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a pretty big shift in lifestyle, I would say. You know, I mean, as a consultant, you have a very comfortable life. You don't really need to worry too much about, you know, how you're going to buy lunch. And, you know, this, you know, as cheeky as it may sound, actually became a question for me at the very end of those 2 years, where I had to ask my wife regularly for lunch money. It's, looking back, it sounds very, you know, weird and funny, but you know, this is something also I will never, you know, forget, that how supportive she was, and you know, paying all our bills and giving me lunch money so that I can buy lunch until we closed the round.
That's beautiful. So like you found a real partner on
Yes.
on your side. And what were the key factors during that hard time that have influenced you positively as a person during this phase?
Wow. I mean, those 2 years were truly, I would say, transformational from a personal perspective. It's just learning to you know, work around no's, learning to, you know, keep going, even though my natural personality is rather pessimistic, which is rare for a founder, I would say.
I don't know if it feels better for you. I'm a similar way.
Okay,
I'm
good.
very, can I say, my mind works very numbers orientated and has to be like, you have to have a proof in your mind that it will work.
Yeah.
So
I hope you have hope you have a co-founder who is unrealistically optimistic.
Even more critical than me, though.
Okay. So in our case, Lucas is unrealistically optimistic every single time. So I always just discount whatever he says. But it helps me keep going. Whenever I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna make it, and he's like, of course we're gonna make it. Then I'm like, okay, we might make it. So we meet each other in the middle. So, you know, learning this also, you know, just getting grounded in a positive way. You know that sometimes when you come from university and then you come from a super well-run and successful company like McKinsey, you know, sometimes your expectations are just completely detached from how reality looks like, and you know, going through that phase really helped me to get back to I would say a good sense of how the world operates, and I, you know, I think it's just easier to live life that way, and you know, just have a good view on what to expect from life.
What mistakes that you have probably done during the time would you not do again?
Well, I mean, again, this may sound like a stupid phrase from a book, but I really believe that there is value in every single mistake you make. So, you know, looking back, I don't wish there are any mistakes I wouldn't have done for the first time back then. So I learned from each of them. I mean, obviously, I try to avoid repeating them over time, and you know, there are some very practical ones, like how you prepare an investment round. You know, as funny as it may sound, I was very surprised the first time we raised what level of detail there is in a due diligence process. Even though I've done due diligences myself for M&A, you know, during my time in consulting, I just didn't feel like this is going to be, you know, happening to us as well when we're just a young early stage startup, that we're going to get these long lists. So that delayed our initial funding by an additional 2 months that I wasn't prepared for that. And that almost led to us going bankrupt, because the first investment round that we signed, the notary date was a week before the first COVID lockdown happened. And, you know, to everyone who has been around the VC market that time, you know that every single transaction that wasn't done got stopped and put on hold indefinitely when the first COVID lockdown hit, because everyone was like, what's happening? Like, you know, are we going to survive this? What are we going to be around in 6 months from now? So no one invested. And, you know, this mistake of not being well prepared enough really almost cost us the entire company. The other mistake which I made, and this was also just due to the fact that we were raising out of a position of weakness rather than a position of strength, because we just didn't have that convincing proof points to show back then, was that we let the progress, the whole fundraising process drag out too long. Next time I'll be raising, I'll try to really time box it, have initial conversations for 2 weeks, open the data room, have it open for 4 to 6 weeks. Whoever wants to look at it then, and then tell us, are you in or are you out? And, this way, we might end up having a lot of no's after 1.5 months, but at least we'll know after 1.5 months that we are in a bad spot and we need to change something. And if you don't do that, you might only learn the same information in 3 or 4 months, which is 3 or 4 months wasted time. And the last learning of a mistake I've done twice already is starting to raise shortly before Christmas. Worst idea ever. I don't know why I did it twice, but it's never working out. You never get it across the line, and then Christmas break happens, and you're gonna be back at the table again earliest second half of January. So it's a.
So when's the best time to start the initial conversation with VCs and investors?
What I do now, and I know some people disagree. Some people say this is not a good approach, but I believe it works well. There are not that many investors in Europe, and also not in the US that fit the profile that we are looking for. So maybe we're talking 200 VCs that could become interesting for us in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I believe I know already 80-90% of them because we've met at events. It's a pretty small community, and I try to engage with them on quite a regular basis, checking in once a year, with some checking in quarterly. So to keep them updated on how things are evolving, and then have them ready, have them lined up when you start to go out and raise the next investment again. And then probably a good time is to start raising around is either in September or in February. I think those are the 2 time slots where you then have 3, 4, 5 months to close the round, because nothing's really happening in the summer, nothing's really happening second half of December, first half of January.
Okay. And you got your first funding, and then COVID hit. How did it affect your team?
We had an office, we just didn't use it, but it was a very cheap office, so it was fine with like 800 euros. It was a small round. It was just a 700K pre-seed, which for a digital health company is really not a lot, because you have to invest quite a lot of money into regulatory stuff, certifications, etc. So even it sounds like a lot of money, personally, it's not a lot of money for the company. So we didn't hire that many people. We, I think, grew the team from the 3 co-founders plus 2 freelancers. We onboarded 2 freelancers full-time, and then we hired another 3 people. So it was still a very small team we were working with. And I guess we just worked our way around the new challenges like everyone else did. And in general, I think COVID, as bad as it was for the world, for digital health companies in general, it was still a positive force, because it just accelerated digitization in the healthcare system by probably 5 to 10 years.
Wow. So this is something the customer will benefit in the end.
Yes. I'm really hesitant anytime someone asks me to call COVID a positive thing. But
yeah, obviously. There are many negative stories, like emotional stories. A lot of people have lost relatives for that time. But I think for many aspects, it has quickened a lot of processes.
Innovation is always accelerated by crisis. War is often the biggest catalyst for innovation, and apparently a global pandemic, has similar effects. Even though after COVID resided, there was a dip again in digitization, because many healthcare companies realized they have, in a not really thought through way, digitized their operations and just digitize for the sake of digitization. And then after the pandemic was over, they were like, okay, do we really need this? So actually 2022, 2023 were much weaker years for digital health companies. And what we're seeing now in 2024 is that there's again a strong uptick in digitization efforts across healthcare systems, but it's done now in a much more thoughtful way. And companies, politicians are really considering what the healthcare system really needs. And we are benefiting from this as well a lot.
And how does your goal look like for Xund right now?
It's
what's the fourth checkpoint now?
I kind of let go of this, IPO in 5 years, or that's just not the way I operate. I really enjoy what we're doing, and obviously, there is a financial goal. Also, just due to the fact that we have, venture capitalists on board who at some point will want to make money out of this business. But my goal for the foreseeable future is, to be able to keep building products that help drive a change in the healthcare systems towards more data-driven decisions, towards better efficiency, towards actually keeping the healthcare system sustainable, despite the growing demand coming from the patient side and the stagnating or sometimes declining supply of humans, doctors, nurses in the system. And I think if we can achieve that, and if we can contribute to this, ultimately the business success will automatically follow.
Cool. So from what I get from our conversation up to now, because I like to ask this question, is if you're rather an analytical thinker when you make decisions, or rather an emotional person?
Oh, absolutely analytical.
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably no surprise after having looked at my CV, and yeah, I think you need a mix again. Coming back to the team.
Yeah, so it's like similar with your approach. The doctor needs to make the decision, which sometimes in some cases, when it's difficult to like take a decision, they have to also rely on their own experiences.
Yeah, intuition. But that's something I would like to change. I would like those decisions to be more data-driven. But yeah, I mean, even though I like to think of myself as a very analytical person, just founding a company is per definition an extremely emotional and very irrational decision. Like, basically from any perspective, my life would have been easier, financially more successful probably so far, less stressful, than if I would have stayed at McKinsey or went on to work at a corporate job or do anything else but being a founder. So this is obviously a blind spot in my analytical mind. So I have an emotional attachment to this, sometimes weird, sometimes wicked, but most of the times extremely fulfilling journey of being an entrepreneur.
What was the most fulfilling moment on your entrepreneurial journey so far?
It's again hard to say, but there is one type of moment which recurs now, luckily more and more often, that really fills me with joy and where I realize, it's so great that we're doing this, is anytime there is a problem and I only learn about it when someone else who works for Xund has solved it.
Okay.
Like when I find out there was a problem, but it's not a problem anymore because someone else, looked at it, analyzed it, gathered the resources to solved it, and now we have a solved problem. And the reason this makes me so happy is because when you start a company, in the beginning, every single problem is your problem. And if you don't solve that problem, no one else will. And, probably the first time when I realized that, there are now other people solving these problems and finding those problems for us. And this whole, thing that we've created, this ecosystem of people is now starting to work on its own. That's the best experience and the best, emotion for me as a founder.
And you can also see this as a compliment for yourself as founder, because you have people working for you who still think on their own and can solve problems on their own. Because I know many CEOs who are very streamlined and everything has to go through a specific process before taking a decision. So having people with you on the journey that also can take decisions which you are then comfortable with afterwards,
I think it really depends on the type of company you are building, and in our case, we are in a market that is basically non-existent. So we are right now creating the market. Mm-hmm. We are working with products that no one else has built before, and we are faced with challenges that probably no one else has faced ever before. So it's very hard to have a streamlined process for solving all those challenges up front. So all you can do is to hire the right people and rely on them, finding the solution, sometimes with your help and sometimes without your help.
And as we wrap up our conversation, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs or consultants? Based on your experiences, how should they approach their journey? How can they found their company? What do they have to look out for?
Yeah, so, first of all, don't think too much about the idea. That's, one, I don't say it was a mistake, because it was an interesting process to go through all these 100 ideas, but we definitely we did a lot of overthinking there, because, looking back, probably we could have been successful with every single one of those 10 ideas, and we could have failed with every single one of those 10 ideas, because ultimately what it comes down to is execution. And to execute well, in the beginning, you need resilience, you need some resources. So it's good if you are prepared. It's good if you, bring some capabilities with you in the beginning. But as soon as you have the chance, start assembling a team around you that will help you become more and more efficient in solving the challenges, which will, come, irrespective of what you do. Challenges will come. It's always just a matter of time, when the next challenge is at your door.
Great. And lastly, there is a question I ask all my guests: is if there is a question that you always wanted to be asked but have never been asked before in an interview before?
I get asked a lot of questions about the company and entrepreneurship. So I don't know if there's anything which has never been asked there, but no one asked me which is my favorite football team so far. So it's Real Madrid. So anyone who...
Finally, yeah. Madridista too.
Yes. Had a very bad timing in choosing Real Madrid as my favorite team. It was in 2002 when they won the Champions League, and then basically after that they didn't win anything for like 10 years. So, but maybe this was a good learning experience for how it is to found a company. You start with a lot of motivation. This is going to be great, and then you have a very hard entry period. But then if looking back at the last 10 years, it has been a real joy to be a Real Madrid fan, and hopefully this somehow also will resemble my entrepreneurial journey. And from today's perspective, it definitely does.
Amazing. I started to be a fan in 2009. It sounds a bit cliche, exactly when Ronaldo came in, but the first year were also very difficult. Yeah. And always when people ask me why do I love football or why do I love Real Madrid, is actually I can compare it very good with my character, because I demand from myself always like the best. You know how you are. But Real Madrid you have to be the best in what you're doing. Otherwise, even the semi-final or reaching the final is not enough.
Yeah.
Do you think the same about yourself?
Probably I have, you could argue that I have, tried to have high standards for myself. But I'm not sure if I'm the best person, to judge that. But I also really much like this. You always go for the maximum, even though, again, just a bit of a learning. Being a perfectionist, which I think I tend to be, can also be quite damaging when you're the founder of a company, because it can lead to a culture where people are afraid to make mistakes, and we try to make sure that there's a healthy failure culture also at Xund, but that's contradicted sometimes when people think, oh, Tommy is a perfectionist, he only accepts the best. That's maybe not the best thing to portray when you're a founder, even though Elon Musk would probably disagree with me here.
Yeah, have a similar viewpoint on this, but I think this is our journey to get comfortable with rejection, with failure, and this teaches us also a lot. I'm completely different since when you compare me before 10 years before, I think you're also similar on that. You learn a lot on the journey.
Absolutely. That's for sure.
Thank you very much for the conversation.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you.
And lovely to hear that I have another Real Madrid fan that I know. Hopefully, if a Barca fan is watching, please forgive us.
Oh, good. Our CTO is a Barca fan. Like on his first day, he arrived with a huge Barcelona sticker on his laptop, and I'm like, oh God. Need to introduce another question to the hiring process. Jokes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wish you a lot of success.
Thank you.
Maybe soon you're back.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.